The pushrod head is something that I think gets a lot of unnecessary and, quite frankly, incorrect flack. The people mock, the big US muscle car engines for being absolutely massive and making very little power. And it's true that pushrod heads are absolutely terrible when it comes to HP per litre. They don't make much power at their displacement. But that's absolutely fine, because the beauty of a pushrod is that it's small and lightweight. Here I've just sort of got some quick points for what a pushrod is good for. It's good for anything that needs a big, lazy engine. So, for example, utility vehicles or luxury cars. And the fact that it's cheap and simple means that in automation, especially in the early game, you can use it for family cars and things, and it'll work well. The fact that it's so cheap to build means that you can use it in pretty much everything at the beginning of the game. I've built like a example engine here just to show you. It's nothing spectacular, it's just standard sort of 70s full barrel, running on 92 fuel, not even a performance intake or anything, just standard stuff. Now, I've done this, and let me put it to full screen, to compare to a overhead cam engine, more specifically direct acting overhead cam. Really, I might go and quickly throw together a 2-valve overhead cam and dual overhead cam engine, but for now, direct acting overhead cam. So I gave them basically the same specs, same cam profile, same fuel mixture, and then same setup otherwise. So the two major defining features of how efficient and powerful an engine is I set from the start. Everything else I then fine-tuned. So, for example, I kept the headers the same and the mufflers the same, but then I adjusted the exhaust diameter, that sort of thing. So, if we compare here, you've got a rather low revving pushrod engine here. I mean, it revs to 4,900 RPM. It has quite a nice sort of wide power band. You can see the torque here. Generally, it's quite flat, which is good. It means the power gains quite smoothly and predictably. This makes it nice to drive, easy to drive, whatever. If we compare then to a direct acting overhead cam, now it does make a bit more power. It is a bit more efficient overall. In fact, can we? Yes, we've got a comparison of stats here. I mean, you'll notice basically everywhere it's fairly similar. Interestingly, it's actually less efficient, which I was not expecting, but actually makes sense, because it is making less power in this lower range, despite it putting the same amount of fuel in, despite it having the same sort of cam profile and having the same head. So there is that to think about. I actually wasn't expecting that, but it does make sense, yeah. So these engines are at the same weight, but the pushrod engine is a 4.4 litre, because it is just so much more compact, so much easier to use, and make bigger, because, well, it's a smaller head. It means that you can make the engine bigger and it takes up the same amount of room. The fact that it's low revving also works in its favour, because you can just keep increasing the stroke of it. You can run pushrods at very high strokes, and it's fine. And since increasing stroke actually adds less weight for the displacement than increasing bore, it just maximizes that lightness, that compactness, which again works in its favour. It's very good for basically getting all your power through displacement. This is why it makes it so good for luxury cars and utility vehicles. You can have a nice wide power band, making quite a lot of power very early on in the RPM range. I've now just quickly put together a single overhead cam 2-valve V8, 4 litre like the direct acting overhead cam. You can see immediately a lot more weight. It is making more peak power. Efficiency isn't that much higher, considering the extra costs and everything. There's a good $40 worth of material costs, which does add up over the course of producing a lot of engines, which with a pushrod engine you can do because they have very low production units and low engineering time, so you can get them out quickly, which is very important in the campaign, as I'm learning. Of course, then if we go up to dual overhead cam, which I think in this early game, when you don't have VVT and stuff, it doesn't have the same sort of benefits. There's a massive gain in weight there, and a bit of efficiency, but the cost and things, it does actually end up making Pushrods look quite good. This is the thing, they're very good for making big engines. Obviously, once you put it into a car, fuel economy isn't going to be good. That's why, at the beginning, I listed fuel economy as a bad point. They aren't good for when you need fuel efficiency, because they rely on displacement to make power. They need to be made very big and sort of lazy. They don't rev high as well, which is why I consider them bad for sports cars. With sports cars, you just want something that keeps on revving, because when you have a higher RPM, you can shorten the gears, and that can make up for any torque losses you have, while also, making it sound cooler as well. Although that's not really a thing that matters in automation. Having a higher RPM and power at a higher RPM does mean that you can do better things with the gear ratios. So the pushrod head definitely has its place in automation. If you're trying to recreate real life V8s and things, it's not going to work. The fact is that in automation we only have hydraulic lifters, which means that if you're doing your classic muscle car replicas, the sort of Chargers, Challengers, the high-end ones of the 60s and early 70s, they all had solid lifters, which means that they can rev out a bit better, they do produce a bit more high-end power, and generally just better suited for sporty purposes. But we don't have access to that, we've only got hydraulic lifters, which is fine, because pushrods in this game have their place as being for lazy cars that just don't need to really be stressed or anything, just be easy to drive with a nice wide torque curve, good for towing, that sort of thing. If you are trying to make replicas, especially in the modern era, because I believe things like GM with the LS and whatnot have moved over to hydraulic lifters, like we have in automation, they have put loads of research into making them work in the modern era. So if you're going to make them, it wouldn't be entirely unrealistic to go up to like high levels of quality. And to be honest, it isn't too bad. I mean, don't get me wrong, that's an obscene amount of engineering time. But once you have things like familiarity in the campaign, things like that, it does help bring it down a bit. I mean, it's not too uncommon to see an engine in, say, 2010 have an engineering time of over 100 or even 200. So once you bring in familiarity, if you've built them over the course of a campaign, having high levels of quality, especially combined with tech pool, it does give them a use in this game. And yeah, please stop saying that pushrod and classic American V8s aren't good at making power, they're terrible engines, or it's a surprise they got so low power at such a big engine, because that's just how pushrod engines work. They're just as lightweight, they can be just as compact, but they just have a high displacement. I know this video was a bit of a mess, it was just something I sort of wanted to get out. Hopefully you got the gist of it and all of that. Thank you for watching. Remember to subscribe to Boost Ethanol for more. I'd like to do more coverage of just talking about different engine parts, talking about their uses and things like that. Pushrod was the first one that came to mind for me when I wanted to do this. So, yeah, thank you for watching, and goodbye.